My name's Michael Moor. I am an ex-dancer. So I was working at the Yvonne Arnaud Theatre in the costume department. So I started taking acting, singing and dancing lessons for the fun of it. I didn't think about it, doing it professionally. I trained at Guildford School of Dance and Drama. Then I went to the Ballet Rambert School. But the head of the Guildford School of Acting in those days was Beachy Belair. She was the founder. Founded it, I think, in 1930-something, 36. And she gave me a scholarship. So that, at that point, made me think, oh, maybe I could do this as a career. At the same token, when she gave me the scholarship, she also suggested that for black people in those days, there wasn't an awful lot of work. And people would say things like that to you in those days. So when I did take up the scholarship, I was the only black person in the school. I was probably the only black person in Guildford. So it wasn't an integrated or unlike today. I mean, and you'd be surprised at the kind of things people would say, because actually back in the 70s, those attitudes were there and you kind of lived with them. And I had been living in and around Guildford since I was 15. So I was kind of used to those. But again, you know, those are the kind of things that could have put people back. I don't know why they didn't put me off. I suddenly saw something interesting and creative, and that something that I could possibly do. And I pursued it, but not without problems in the early days. Then I went to, I found it too difficult to go to Guildford School of Dance and Drama as it was then. And I had heard about the Ballet Rambert School, which specialized in boys and late starters. So I was a late starter. I auditioned for the Ballet Rambert School. I got in, and that kind of, in Notting Hill Gate, surrounded by lots of other guys, that was where I trained. And that set me on the road, and I still think probably the happiest time I had in the dance world was probably the 3 years I spent at Rambert. Interestingly, when I was at the Guildford School of Acting, Surrey didn't. That's why I had to have a scholarship from Guildford, because Surrey was very bad at giving grants for the arts. As it happens, my parents moved to Gloucester, and Gloucester allowed you to audition for a scholarship, for a grant. And I auditioned for my grant to go to Rambert for Gloucester County Council. My family were kind of not radical, but they. I remember as a kid going on ban the bomb marches, and so they were pretty right on. So they had always encouraged me to do what I wanted to do, and I think in many ways I was not inhibited because of that kind of foundation. And they gave me, all sorts of. I remember my father giving me, when I was going through a difficult bit of adolescence, he gave me Catcher in the Rye to read. So they were really good like that. So I didn't have a problem, and as I say, they looked into, especially when they moved. Michael, you can audition, and they applied and helped me and stuff. I remember my first ballet class. I spoke to my mother and said, well, I've got to get some tights apparently. So she gave me a pair of red tights, her red tights. And then I bought some Scottish dancing shoes because I like them better than the ballet shoes. So I looked like a right mess, complete. Walked into the classroom, all these 10 and 12-year-old girls start laughing. I had the most embarrassing thing of all. I went to a sports shop to get a jockstrap because it says you have to have a jockstrap. Of course, you get one of those rugby jock straps with the bits on the side. So it was a complete disaster. So I was like a laughing stock from the beginning. But I had been an athlete at school, so I was quite athletic. And a sort of month or so into the training, a choreographer came to do some teaching. Angela Hardcastle was her name. And she encouraged me and put me in my first ballet, and I've got a picture of it somewhere. And then at some point, I think she spoke to me and said, Michael, maybe this isn't the best place for you. You should be with other boys so that you could learn how they work. And I think she might have been the first person, now that I think about it, who said, why don't you try Rambert? So I remember Rambert, the experience of Rambert, being with a lot of guys and being taught, time to practice. And I think that was the thing, is that after class, we would be taken by another teacher to practice some of the things that we couldn't do. So you not only had class, but you would then be given on Shame On and all sorts of other things to kind of practice. I was in the year with Mark Eli. And then I think the year above me, there was at least one other black student, and I think Julie Felix. So Julie Felix and Robert. There might have been another mixed race, I can't remember, but it was always good. I walked into Rambert, and because I was quite late auditioning and getting the preparation, etc. for that, I didn't have a normal audition class. There was me and this other guy, and we had to take a first-year ballet class. It was the boys' first-year ballet class. So me and this guy, who also got in on that day, we kind of went into the class. There was 25, maybe 30 guys. I'd never seen that many men in one class. And all different kind of shapes and sizes. But, you know, it was just suddenly to see that after being with girls, you know, boom. So you've got all this testosterone in a row. And so we went in there, and then we started the bar. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm dying here. I've never worked so hard in my life. I was on the tondus, and she would like give us 16 tondus en croix and all this kind of stuff. So you were sweating. All the guys around me were like dying. I thought, my God, is this what it's like? And then, so we managed to get through this. And then it comes to the adage stuff. And it's the first time I'd ever had to shoulder my leg. So one of her exercises was sort of développé, bring it in, up, shoulder the leg. And I did it. And I think, you know, it all went, and the next day, I was in bed all day recovering from that class. They were looking for chorus members for a couple of operas. One of those operas was Salome, Richard Strauss's Salome. There's a whole load of slaves in it. Yeah, it's great, interesting opera. So I did that. That was my first professional job was in the chorus of the English National Opera, and I did that for 3 or 4 years while I was at Rambert. So there were times when I was at Rambert during the day and performing at the English National Opera at night. I might even have, I think I might be blacklisted still in Germany because I didn't take my contract to go to Kiel. Dance Theatre of Haarlem were performing at Sadler's Wells, and I asked if I could take company class, and so I showed up and took company class. At the end of class, and Arthur Mitchell took company class. At the end of class, Arthur Mitchell said, "Come back tomorrow." So I did that for 2 weeks. So I kept going to company class for 2 weeks. Then they went back to New York. And then I got a telegram asking me to come over and join the company. And that's how I got into Dance Theatre of Haarlem. That's how I got it. Just lucky. You know, if Dance Theatre were on tour a month later, I'd have been in Germany. I was there with Julie Felix. Yep. I think Mark Eli was there for a while. Patrick Lewis was there for a while. I think those were all the Brits, and I was there. 2.5 years, something like that. Carol Straker was there for a little while. She wasn't there for very long. I think she went to, didn't she go to Alvin Ailey? That's right. So I only seem to remember her being in one class. Because I had met her in London, but I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, but I remember her in one class. I took a while to get acclimatized. Because, you know, you go to a company that's well established, a new person comes in, and I wasn't ready for that dynamic. That dynamic of competition, jealousy. I'd only ever seen you know, a good kind of spirit. And I think that on the plus side, when Dance Theatre of Harlem performed, the demographic of the audience would be something like 50–60% black. You know, go to Washington, you could see that. Go to City Centre, lots of black people show up to see dance theatre. And the other people that I got to know, because I became friends with Mel Tomlinson. Mel Tomlinson also used to be with Alvin Ailey's company. So I got to know a lot of people in Alvin Ailey. We went to see Alvin Ailey and met him backstage. I mean, it gave me a much deeper understanding of that. And that was to come into play later on when I did my master's degree. My thesis was on the Harlem Renaissance. So that sustained me, but also made me kind of realize that what I was veering to in my entire career and all the things that I'd subconsciously been drawn to was that exploration of culture, self, the black diaspora, all of those things. In those days, dance theatre was kind of seen as a kind of ambassadors. So we would have to travel with our tuxedos because every time we went to a different country, we were invited to the embassy. And so part of what we did, and when we came to part of the tour that ended at the Royal Opera House, and we were introduced to, after one performance, Frederick Ashton, Ninette de Valois, Nancy Reagan, and I can't remember who the other one was. Well, that's enough to start off with anyway. But I mean, and that was what it was like. So what I would say about Dance Theatre of Harlem is that you became very aware that you were an ambassador, a cultural ambassador. The company saw themselves as that. Arthur Mitchell saw it as that. And I think that's kind of what we bought into. I would say that I was core stroke coryphée. So there were times when I did bits. So I did more than core with Douglas. So I was in I was the green, one of the green boys. So one of four. So I never did a solo, but I was sometimes one of four. Every artist, in my view, probably has to come across at some point, how good am I? How far can I take this? And also, how much longer am I going to stay in the States? And we're talking late 70s up to the early 80s. I'd had a gun pulled on me 3 times. New York was a very, very rough place. And we had incidents. I mean, as much as on the one hand, I had a kind of revelation about the culture and this and that, I still also got to a point where I realized that it wasn't my culture. I'm in this pub with I think Mike Small, but I know that Tom Job was there. Because after talking for a while and catching up, Tom Job says to me, I've got a friend who's doing a play for the BBC, or a series called The Dancers, and they're looking for somebody to play the part of this character called Judah. So somehow Tom Job arranged for me to have an audition with the BBC, which happened. I got the part, and I was in the. It was a terrible series called The Dancers. They were going to do 13 episodes. My character was supposed to be reoccurring, but they only did 4 episodes. So I then, after that, I did Octopussy. So I was 10, 12 weeks in India working on a James Bond film. Then, oh God, that's, so the next thing that I did in dance, so I did a lot of acting, bit parts in films. I did Lace. And I have to say, after doing film work, I realized that the less I did, the more I got paid. I was struggling to become a dancer, rehearsing 10 hours a day. And I earned more sitting by the pool, waiting for my scenes to come up. It was crazy. It's crazy. They were all wonderful things. And then I think the next thing that I started to do, film work sort of slowed down a bit. And I started doing bits and pieces of teaching to fill in with it. And that's when I think actually I got a job in Sweden, teaching at the, there was 2 main schools. There was the Royal Ballet School, not that, but the other one. So it was the Ballet Academy. I taught at the Ballet Academy for a couple of years. So I taught ballet, and I taught some sort of jazz and partnering, and did a bit of guest teaching around Gothenburg. And so, it was a living, but it meant that I was away for about two years, I think. One of my friends was working at London Studio Centre, so then I started teaching at London Studio Centre, and I think Chance to Dance came up sort of around then, and then also I was doing bits and pieces with Sylvia Young. So what I would do is I used to teach the morning ballet class at Studio Centre. It was usually a boys' class. And I had my own kind of group that I would give the morning ballet class to. Then I would go to Sylvia Young's, teach a couple of hours, and then I would go on to do Chance to Dance after that. So that lasted for about 4 or 5 years. Oh, the ones that I remember that have done well. Yeah, Chevelle. But he stood out. He stood out in terms of flexibility. I mean, he had everything really. But most importantly, his father was really, really behind him. And they were great. Everything that he could do to support, whether he understood or not what was going on, That was really lovely, and it was really lovely that Chevelle took to it so well. I hadn't met Brenda at Dance Theatre of Harlem. I met Brenda first when I was at Dance Theatre of Harlem, but she was on tour with the Wiz. I think you'd have to commend the Royal Ballet. They did throw resources at it. I remember Anthony Dowell taking an interest. So I think that as a program, I think it was give and take. I mean, I think it certainly helped the Royal Ballet to have a certain set of boxes ticked. But at the same token, Darryl and Jane Hackett, when I was there, did get things done. They did get scholarships for people. They did take kids from some of the most difficult places, the White City Estate and Loughborough Road, and it was surprisingly successful. Surprisingly successful in that people stayed on the program, and a number of them did well and became professional dancers. Not all of them became classical dancers. I'm not sure how many. The ones that I remember are probably Chevelle. But then he was, you know, you go to a school and you audition kids. You know, these are ordinary kids. That you find a Chevelle in 1 in 500 people that you audition. Hello, welcome to the odds. While I was working for teaching for the Opera House, Sylvia Young's, I was doing my master's degree. So I had to defer a couple of years. So it took me like 3 years to do my master's degree. Anyway, I finally got it. And I moved up to Manchester and my first job was with University College of Manchester, but that was actually in Warrington. I paid my dues there as a lecturer in performing arts for about 4 or 5 years. Then once I'd gained that experience working, knowing how to write modules, create. In fact, actually, I think I had the first musical theatre module validated by Manchester University. So I was there for just about a year and a half, actually. I validated their dance program, and in the meantime, I'd been asked to go to the Guildford School of Acting. So I went there as head of movement. And then I became head of undergraduate studies, and then head of musical theatre, and deputy head of the school. Now, I run my own theatrical agency. So I'm in semi-retirement now, and so I have what do I know? I know how to find work for people. Waiting in the green room of the Sadler's Wells, old Sadler's Wells. I'm about to meet Arthur Mitchell, he's going to, I don't know what he's going to say to me, but I know that they were going to, I don't think I'd really spoken to him. He just asked to speak to me. So I was there. So we're having this little conversation. In walks Margot Fontaine. Arthur Mitchell says, hello, Dame Margot. This is Michael. He's going to join the company, I think. And I think that was one of when I realized what I was getting into. This was the world. And, it was something that kind of stuck in my mind. In Chicago, there was a class at a school. Anyway, so I found out about this. They said that whoever they were said that this is the place to go. And it was run by Ruth Page. So I go to this class, and this little old lady is standing behind me, doing ballet, all of this kind of. I thought, oh my God, what is going on? Anyway, she came up to me at the end of the class and she said, are you from dance theatre? And I said, yes, we're performing. And then I looked her up. Look up Ruth Page. There's like pages and pages. She's, and in fact, I didn't realize she used to work with another quite well-known dancer called Bentley Stone. Ruth Page and Bentley Stone. And we were doing one of her ballets. And it was Frankie and Johnny. Frankie and Johnny. And I did class with lovely Ruth Page. Remember after one class, I'd fallen on the floor doing pirouettes and tour on there. And I'm sitting in the room and I'm like in the dressing room. And I'm like, really contemplating the meaning of life, and this is the worst time in my life, And I remember one of might have been someone like Jeremy James, said, well, Michael, just think, after that class, it can't get any worse. And if you keep on trying, at least you won't get worse. So every time I get to a point where I think that the world's coming to an end, I realize that, it's not going to get much worse than that, is it? So I can, it was both humorous, matter of fact, and made me just realize, just get on with it. Just get on with it. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Doesn't help. One of the best dancers that I think that I ever saw and worked with was Mel Tomlinson. So, just look at his career. New York City Ballet, Alvin Ailey, Dance Theatre of Harlem, principal dancer in all of those companies. No turnout. Yet, he had super high extension. He didn't have ballon. He could jump high, but there was no real ballon. Not like someone like Baryshnikov that's just ballon. It's just, but watchable, could work with an audience. I think the body is only half of it. I've seen people, I remember watching Nureyev, and it was when he did the season at the Colosseum. 6 weeks he did. Performed every night for 6 weeks. And I swear to God, The night I saw him, he was doing Le Corsair. And only willpower got him off the ground. He was all over the shop. You know, he's coming down like this, or he's on a pirouette, and then this willpower pulled it back up. And you know what? That was more interesting to watch than some of these guys that are so technically perfect. And I remember watching Nureyev just come on stage, and he just did. And the audience burst into applause because he had charisma. So, bollocks to the perfect body. Can you dance? Have you got it? You've got to have a serviceable body. I think that, you have to start from a young age. As a late starter, I was injured all the time. Achilles tendons, it's all of this stuff. You need to require a certain set of muscles that you can't acquire from doing anything else. So I decline to answer that question because I don't believe it's relevant. There'll be a certain amount of things, people that you need a certain amount of flexibility, you need musicality, you need determination, and you need to have a desire to contact an audience. I'm not sure that I see that the kind of barriers that were there when I was training are there, because I remember Angela Ellis did try to get me into festival ballet. She called them. And festival ballet say we can't take him. Now, I don't think that would happen anymore. My view on that is that I'm not sure that I see evidence that gifted black dancers are not given opportunities. Depends on how good you are. If we're talking about financial funds, that's a different story. I'd never seen so many black people in an audience until went to City Centre and saw Alvin Ailey's company, or when we did a City Centre with Dance Theatre of Harlem. So my gut feeling is we need to develop a black audience to see professional work. Black audiences don't go to musicals, they don't go to operas, they don't go to ballets. We don't have a significant audience. I would say that's got to at least be part of it. Don't do it. I'll give them the same advice that I was given. Don't do it. Unless you have got the chutzpah to struggle your way through.